Welcome to Poetry with Shing, where we uncover the beauty behind poetry. In today's episode, we'll be looking at two poems, Fear by Ciaran Carson and Dwelling by Brenda Hillman. And the question that we will be answering today is to write a critical comparison of the following poems, considering how the use of poetic form, language, and style contribute to the poet's portrayal of fear. So when you look at this question, the first thing that you should ask yourself would be what are the poet's intentions in their portrayal of fear? And what is the message that they have underlying their portrayal of fear? I will not be reading the poems out because the poems are on the screen for you to take a look at. And in today's episode, we will be diving directly into unpacking the poems and seeing how we can try to write an answer to this critical comparison. Alright, without further ado, let's begin. In poem A, which is Fear, and we shall call Dwelling poem B. Alright, so let's start. In poem A, Fear by Ciaran Carson, and poem B, Dwelling by Brenda Hillman, the notion of fear is examined through the poet's use of form, language, and style. In poem A, Carson adopts a cold and unfeeling tone towards fear. So let's write that down. Cold and unfeeling tone. Highlighting her perception of fear as a chronic manifestation that is, although unique and raw, is also a result of modern world problems. So, let me write what I just said down. Hillman, on the other hand, adopts a dreamy tone that hints at denial, to exude how fear is chaotic, irrational, and ultimately a choice. So let me write that down here. So how do these two poems show their differing intentions? Both poets differ in their use of form. In poem A, Carson adopts an ABBA rhyme scheme that subsequently transitions to an ABA rhyme scheme. The use of such a regular rhyme scheme that has a predictable pattern reveals how fear is rhythmic and predictable. The almost mechanical rhyming structure further highlights the terrorizing nature of fear, such that it can repeat regularly in one's life. The manifestation of fear is also shown in the subsequent transition to an ABA rhyme scheme towards the second half of the poem. Perhaps indicative of a poetic shift, Carson portrays fear as a warping of reality. As the usual original ABBA rhyme scheme has had a line removed, highlighting a twisting of the original, which can be interpreted as reality. The repetition of I fear throughout the poem further supports the rhythmic, almost chronic manifestation of fear in one's life, showing that fear is a constant in one's life. Just as I fear is constantly appearing throughout the poem. On the other hand, in poem B, Hillman adopts a fluid structure in the poem, with it being free verse. The lack of a clear pattern in the poem hints at how fear is chaotic and fluid, akin to how the stanzas have unpredictable numbers of lines. The on dash at the start of the first stanza over here, if you can't see, it will be over here. Also hints at an interruption in the speaker's stream of consciousness, signaling how fear is chaotic and unpredictable, such that it can disrupt one's stream of thought and perhaps even daily activities. Hence, Carson portrays fear as a terrorizing, chronic manifestation that is almost predictable for poem A. Hillman, on the other hand, portrays fear as a chaotic, fluid emotion that has destructive powers to one's life and is often unpredictable. Next, both poets use imagery but to varying intentions. In poem A, Carson employs imagery of imagination to indicate that fear is caused by irrationality. The poem says, I fear the Jabberwock and I fear the gremlins, to indicate the speaker's irrational fears that are fueled by imagination, as Jabberwock alludes to Dr. Seuss characters in a book, with Jabberwock over here, and can cause one to believe, sorry, um, alludes to Dr. Seuss characters in a book and is thus make-believe. Gremlins are also unreal over here, as they belong to the mythical and supernatural realm. As these images of characters from one's imagination terrorizes the speaker, Carson conveys that fear is irrational and can cause one to believe the existence of what lies in our imagination. Poem A also uses imagery of modern world concerns to highlight how fear is a result of modern day problems. I fear the books will not survive the acid rain. Over here, references the ongoing climate change crisis humans are facing, with acid rain connoting the harmful impacts of increasing harmful activity by humans in the world. Books connote intelligence and knowledge. Thus, Carson highlights how fear is partially driven by humanity's conflict with problems about our environment, including that about how knowledge will cease to be spread in the future due to climate change. Fear is also portrayed to be a universal feeling through the imagery of I fear to read the small print of the guarantee, with guarantee alluding to the sly nature of modern-day insurance agencies and investments. As buying insurance and investing are close to everyone's life, given how common it is, Carson shows that fear is a common experience that is shared among humans. So the idea about the small print will be over here. So because everybody would be involved in like buying insurance or any other endeavor, so it shows that fear is a universal feeling. Just as how small print of a guarantee is also very common whenever you're purchasing something. And going back to the Jabberwock, it's about how fear lies in our imagination, and sometimes we might be a victim of our imagination, where fear begins to irrationally take hold of us. And acid rain alludes to climate change and the harmful impacts of human action in today's world that is causing lots of fear. Let's move on to the other poem. Conversely, in poem B, Hillman uses imagery of nature to highlight the irrationality of fear. Hillman employs imagery of nature in People Were Dreaming of Peaches, with peaches suggesting fertility and abundance that paints a relaxing and soothing image in readers' minds. So the part that I'm talking about would be over here. People were dreaming of peaches. This calmness is juxtaposed in the subsequent imagery of the dreamer walked over the hot coals, with a hot coal signaling danger that contrasts with the soothing nature of dreams of peaches. So dreaming is soothing, but the idea of hot coals is quite dangerous. And it seems like a rite of passage of sorts, or some other ritualistic experience. With a stark contrast, Hillman seeks to convey that fear is irrational, and it has the power to control our emotions, akin to how relaxation is evoked in the first image that is quickly replaced by tensions and feelings of threat in the image of fire. Hillman also seeks to portray fear as a vulnerability, leading to shame and denial, through the use of imagery of desire. I feared the poem was just like her, and that it would abandon me, which is here. What does it highlight? It indicates that fear is influenced by past traumatic experiences. So fear is influenced by the past. And on top of that, it is also this past traumatic experience is represented by heartbreak in the poem. With heartbreak dealing with emotion, it signals that fear is vulnerable and personal. The fact that this line is kept within brackets with a punctuation indicating it is a side note that ought to be hidden, it highlights the feelings of shame or feeling fear. So this idea of a side note links to shame and vulnerability. Because this shame or feeling fear is such that it cannot be conveyed outrightly but must be omitted as a caveat. Thus, Hillman paints fear as a vulnerability that is fraught with shame, and fear is irrational. On the other hand, Carson portrays fear as a universal feeling, but nonetheless irrational. Finally, both poets' use of title reveal different attitudes of the poets to fear. In poem A, the one word fear as a title indicates its genuinity and raw nature. So, let me write that down. So it's very direct, straightforward. And so it's more candid and raw feeling. Such that this idea of fear in poem A cannot be sugar-coated, reflecting how fear directly influences humans, not indirectly. This genuinity paints fear as vivid to humans. On the other hand, poem B, the title Dwelling, suggests the permanence of fear and that fear is a choice. The diction of dwelling connotes a house which people usually choose to permanently stay in. Hence, Hillman perceives fear as a conscious human decision that may even bring humans comfort, as a dwelling is where humans seek solace in. So this idea of dwelling, its permanence, and how you're able to choose your house could lead to readers thinking that perhaps the poet is talking about how fear is comforting, as how a house might be comforting, a home might be comforting. And while fear is comforting, you might ask why that is so. That's because fear is a very common emotion, and people ought to come to terms with it. And sometimes there's a sort of comfort in understanding your vulnerabilities. To conclude, Carson portrays fear as a terrorizing, chronic manifestation that is caused by irrationality and modern-day problems. She does this through the use of a regular rhyme scheme and imagery. On the other hand, Hillman portrays fear as chaotic and permanent through a free verse, imagery, and the title of the poem, while poem B portrays fear as a unique, personal experience that some may hide with shame. Poem A proposes fear as a universal shared experience humanity goes through. Poem A highlights the almost mechanical, predictable strokes of fear, but Poem B perceives fear to be fluid and unpredictable. While these ideas contrast each other, perhaps fear is both a personal and a universal experience, and perhaps there is order in the chaos of fear, just at different levels and in different perspectives. Alright, that marks the end of today's episode of our poetry discussion. Hope you enjoyed it. Look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Thank you and goodbye.